3:30, July 5, 1943. The ground shudders before the sound arrives. A low, rolling tremor moves through the black soil, up through boots and bones. In the darkness, engines cough to life, deep, metallic growls mixed with the sharp stink of fuel and oil. Steel tracks bite into wet earth. Somewhere ahead, artillery cracks open the night, a sudden white flash followed by a concussion that slaps the chest flat. Men grip cold metal. Sweat runs despite the chill. The steppe is holding its breath. In a few minutes, it will erupt. A flare rises, hanging briefly like a dying star. It casts long shadows, turrets, barrels, antennas, hundreds of them. Thousands. The silhouettes of tanks sit nose to nose with fate. Radios hiss. Orders are short. Final. When the signal comes, there will be no pulling back. Only forward, into fire. Dawn breaks not with light, but with thunder. As the sun climbs over the Kursk salient, the earth becomes a battlefield measured not in meters, but in machines. This is the summer of 1943. 2 years of war have bled Europe dry, and here, on this bulging arc of Soviet-held land, the German army is betting everything on one blow. They call it Operation Citadel. If it works, the Eastern Front might swing back in their favor. If it fails, the consequences will be permanent. The Soviets know it's coming. For months, the Red Army has listened to the land. Intelligence filters in from every direction: aerial reconnaissance, captured documents, intercepted radio traffic, partisan reports. The Germans are gathering armor on an unprecedented scale. New machines. Heavier guns. Thicker armor. The Soviets respond not with speed, but with patience. They dig. And dig again. By July, the Kursk salient is layered like geological strata. Minefields stretch for kilometers, anti-tank, anti-personnel, laid by the millions. Trenches snake across fields. Gun pits are camouflaged. Artillery is zeroed in on pre-registered kill zones. Tank reserves wait just beyond the horizon, engines silent, crews sleeping beside their vehicles. The Red Army has learned, the hard way, how the Wehrmacht fights. This time, they will let the Germans come. On the German side, confidence is forced but real. The Tiger tank has arrived in numbers never seen before. The Panther, rushed into service, promises speed and firepower that can punch through Soviet armor at long range. The Ferdinand assault gun, massive, almost absurd, mounts an 88mm gun feared across Europe. On paper, it is overwhelming, but paper does not show dust-clogging engines. It does not show rushed crews, untested transmissions, or the strain of fighting a war that no longer feels winnable. Delays have pushed the offensive from spring into high summer. Every day waited is another day the Soviets prepare. When the attack begins, it does not come as a surprise, but it comes as a shock. German artillery opens up along the entire arc. Thousands of guns fire in coordinated waves. The sky vibrates. Smoke rolls across the fields, choking and blinding. Behind it, German armor moves forward in tight formations, engineers scrambling ahead to clear mines under fire. Tanks explode before they even see the enemy. Tracks are torn off. Crews bail out, some on fire, some already gone. The Soviets answer with their own barrage. Katyusha rockets scream overhead, a sound like tearing metal. Shells crash into advancing columns. Anti-tank guns wait until the last second, then open fire point blank. The steppe becomes a furnace of steel and flame. This is not one battle. It is many, happening at once. To the north, near Orel, German forces grind forward meter by meter, paying for every gain in wrecked armor. To the south, near Belgorod, the fighting becomes even more violent. Here, the 2 SS Panzer Corps pushes hard, trying to break through before Soviet reserves can react. Tanks clash at distances so close that crews can see faces through vision slits. Guns fire until barrels glow. The numbers are staggering. Over the coming days, nearly 6,000 tanks and self-propelled guns will be committed by both sides. It is the largest concentration of armored vehicles in history. The noise never stops. Even at night, the battlefield glows, burning hulks lighting the dark like beacons. Inside a tank, the world shrinks to heat, smoke, and noise. The air is thick with cordite. Commands are shouted over engine roar. A hit feels like being struck by a hammer the size of a house. Sometimes the armor holds. Sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't, there is no time, yet amid the chaos, patterns emerge. German armor punches forward, but slowly. Too slowly. Soviet defenses bend but do not break. Every breakthrough runs into another line, then another. For every German tank destroyed, others push past, but the cost is mounting. Mechanical failures sideline Panthers in alarming numbers. Recovery vehicles cannot keep up. Fuel runs low. Ammunition dwindles. Meanwhile, Soviet commanders watch their maps, waiting for the moment they have prepared for since winter. They are not trying to stop the Germans everywhere. They are trying to wear them down. Bleed them. Fix them in place. By mid-July, the battlefield around Kursk is littered with wreckage. Twisted metal. Blackened earth. The smell of burning fuel hangs in the air, sweet and nauseating. Crews fight on surrounded by the remains of yesterday's advance. Each side believes the next push might be the one that decides it, and then, south of Kursk, near a small railway station called Prokhorovka, two massive armored forces begin moving toward each other, on a collision course that will compress days of violence into a single, brutal morning. The question is no longer who has the better tank, or the bigger gun. It's who can survive what comes next. The morning of July 12, 1943 arrives heavy and close, the air already warm before the sun clears the horizon. Dust hangs low over the fields south of Kursk, stirred by days of constant movement. The land around Prokhorovka is scarred, shell craters filled with smoke, shattered trees stripped bare, rail embankments torn apart. Somewhere beyond the haze, engines idle. Hundreds of them. Orders move fast now. Soviet tank armies, held back for this moment, are released. Steel surges forward. From the German side, the 2 SS Panzer Corps prepares for what it believes will be a final push. The Leibstandard, Das Reich, Totenkopf, elite divisions hardened by years of war, line up their armor. Tigers anchor the formations, their long 88mm guns pointing east. Panzer IVs form the backbone. Crews are exhausted but focused. They believe Soviet armor will be met at range, destroyed methodically, just as doctrine demands. That is not what happens. Out of the dust come Soviet tanks in overwhelming numbers, T-34s charging at full speed, engines screaming, tracks throwing earth into the air. They do not slow. They close the distance deliberately, collapsing the Germans' greatest advantage, long-range firepower. At point-blank range, the battle becomes chaos. This is Prokhorovka. Tank guns fire almost muzzle to muzzle. Rounds ricochet. Turrets jam. Vehicles collide, sometimes intentionally, grinding steel against steel. German gunners struggle to traverse fast enough. Soviet crews fire on the move, often without stopping. Smoke and dust reduce visibility to meters. Command dissolves into instinct. A Tiger fires, destroying one T-34, then another slams into its side, forcing the turret off alignment. Infantry scatter between machines, clinging to the ground as tanks roar past inches away. The noise is constant, crushing. Men inside tanks cannot hear their own voices. For hours, the field becomes a maelstrom of motion and fire. The popular image of Prokhorovka is one of a single, clean clash, thousands of tanks charging headlong. The reality is messier, more brutal. The fighting unfolds in waves, along narrow corridors hemmed in by anti-tank ditches, rail lines, and ravines. Soviet losses are severe. Entire companies are wiped out in minutes. But they keep coming. Why? Because for the first time, the Red Army is not reacting. It is dictating the fight. Soviet doctrine here is blunt and costly, but effective. Close with the enemy. Overwhelm with numbers. Force German tanks into knife-range combat where armor thickness matters less, where flanking shots are possible, where mechanical superiority erodes under pressure. The T-34 is not invincible, but it is fast, rugged, and present in numbers the Germans cannot match, and behind the tanks, Soviet artillery pounds German rear areas relentlessly. Supply routes are hit. Recovery crews trying to tow damaged vehicles are shelled. Wounded tanks are abandoned because they cannot be saved. By midday, the battlefield is choked with wrecks. German crews report ammunition running low. Tigers, feared and respected, are still deadly, but they are too few. Panthers, plagued by breakdowns since the opening days of Citadel, are conspicuously absent in many sectors. Fuel consumption skyrockets in the stop-start brutality of close combat. Commanders begin to realize something unsettling: they are not advancing. Across the salient, the pattern repeats. In the north, German forces have stalled completely. In the south, gains measured in kilometers have cost hundreds of tanks. Every reserve committed is another reserve gone. And then news arrives that changes everything: Allied forces have landed in Sicily. The strategic picture shifts in an instant. Hitler, already uneasy about the losses at Kursk, now faces a new front in the Mediterranean. The question is no longer how to win at Kursk, but whether Germany can afford to keep trying. On July 13, the order is given: Operation Citadel is halted. For the men still fighting, the order changes little in the moment. The guns do not stop. Tanks still burn. But the initiative has slipped away. The Red Army feels it first. Within days, Soviet counteroffensives erupt north and south of the salient. Fresh armies move forward with confidence born of survival. German units, depleted and worn down, are forced onto the defensive. The front that once threatened to encircle Soviet forces now begins to collapse inward on itself. Kursk is not a single day. It is a grinding, attritional struggle lasting weeks. By its end, the numbers tell a grim story. Germany has lost irreplaceable armored strength, experienced crews, veteran formations, machines that cannot be rebuilt fast enough. The Soviets have suffered enormous casualties too, but they can replace them. Their factories are already outpacing German production. Their crews are learning faster. Their commanders are growing bolder. This is the real turning point. After Kursk, the German army will never again launch a major strategic offensive on the Eastern Front. From this point forward, it will fight retreats, long, bloody withdrawals toward Berlin. The balance of power has shifted permanently, yet standing amid the wreckage at Prokhorovka, that future is invisible. What remains are the immediate sensations: the heat from burning hulls, the metallic tang in the air, the silence that falls between barrages. Survivors climb out of their machines, stunned, deafened, alive by chance. The largest tank battle in history is over, but the war is far from finished, and as Soviet forces begin to push westward, one question hangs over the shattered steppe: how far will this momentum carry them, and what will Germany sacrifice to stop what it has unleashed? July 14, 1943. The sun rises over Kursk's battered fields like a reluctant witness. Smoke still curls from cratered earth. The air tastes of fire and oil, bitter and metallic. Broken tanks litter the landscape, hulks of steel, twisted, blackened, some still smoldering. Every machine tells a story of survival or sudden death. The battlefield stretches endlessly, scarred in a way that no map could ever fully convey, but war does not pause for observation. The Soviet counteroffensive, long prepared in secret, surges forward. Reserves committed days earlier now strike with overwhelming force. The Germans, already exhausted, find themselves reacting, never initiating. Artillery hammers, air support circles above, and tanks, newly repaired or freshly produced, join the push. It is relentless. There is no time to grieve losses, only to move, fire, and survive. Amid the chaos, human stories emerge. Tank commanders clutch maps as shells tear the earth around them. Gun crews sweat, muscles aching, their eyes fixed on distant silhouettes, some enemy, some friend. Signals crackle, radios die, and yet the machine presses on. Fear is constant, but courage is louder. Some men fight knowing there is no chance of victory, only the slim hope of staying alive until the next day. Others fight because survival has become instinct. Soviet engineers move forward with the front lines, repairing roads, clearing mines, and laying fresh fields of obstacles to slow any counterattack. Every kilometer is earned through labor and courage. For German forces, logistics have become the silent enemy. Fuel shortages, broken vehicles, and exhausted crews sap strength faster than bullets or shells ever could. The once feared Panther and Tiger tanks now sit abandoned in fields, engines dead, optics shattered. As the counteroffensive unfolds, the air is alive with the sound of flight. Stuka dive bombers and Yak fighters streak across the sky, a deadly ballet. Bombs shake the ground, sending dust and shrapnel into soldiers' eyes. Even from the air, the scale of Kursk is incomprehensible. Tens of thousands of men, thousands of tanks, and artillery lining every ridge and hollow, an industrial-scale clash of destruction. By late July, the Red Army has reclaimed much of the territory lost in the initial German thrust. The salient is shrinking. German units withdraw, reorganize, and attempt to stabilize the front, but the initiative is gone. Soviet commanders now dictate the pace of combat. They probe, attack, and encircle. Every counterattack by the Wehrmacht is measured, defensive, and cautious. The scale of the German failure becomes painfully clear. At Prokhorovka, the memory of July 12 lingers like a scar. It was not a decisive annihilation of German forces as often dramatized, but it was decisive strategically. The Germans never again regain momentum in the east. The T-34s, the tanks that seemed modest in design, have proven their worth. They are fast, reliable, and deadly in numbers. Every new Soviet tank crossing the horizon is another signal that Germany's industrial advantage is slipping. Kursk was also a battlefield of innovation. Soviet anti-tank tactics, layered defenses, and pre-planned artillery zones demonstrate a mastery of coordination rarely seen at this scale. German tactics, meanwhile, reveal the limits of technology when logistical and human factors are ignored. Weapons alone could not win the battle. Strategy, preparation, and resilience prove decisive, but the cost is staggering. Over 200,000 men are killed, wounded, or captured. Thousands of tanks, armored vehicles, and guns are destroyed. Villages are leveled. Railways are shattered. Survivors walk across a landscape that is alien, burned into memory, haunted by the screams and explosions of days past. Yet for the Soviet Union, Kursk is a victory not only of arms but of morale. It is proof that they can take the fight to the Wehrmacht and survive, even thrive, in the most brutal circumstances. As the summer sun climbs higher, the front lines begin to settle into a tense stalemate. The steppe is quiet, but the war is far from over. The Germans regroup, patching holes where possible, while the Soviets push forward with a confidence born of survival and preparation. Every day now tilts the balance slightly more toward the east. Hitler's forces will never regain the initiative they once had. The Eastern Front will slowly but inexorably roll westward. Kursk leaves a legacy that extends far beyond July 1943. It reshapes armored warfare. It proves the value of massed defenses, combined arms coordination, and the industrial depth of a nation. The lessons of Prokhorovka echo in tank doctrine for decades. Every modern armored force studies it, not just for tactics, but for understanding the human dimension of mechanized war. Courage, fear, sacrifice, and the will to endure. And amid the wreckage, amid the ruins of men and machines, there is a quiet realization: even the mightiest tank, the most advanced gun, and the most experienced crew cannot win a battle without preparation, coordination, and, above all, the endurance to survive the first fire. Kursk was not only the largest tank battle in history, it was a crucible, shaping the future of war, the fate of nations, and the lives of those who faced it head-on. And yet, as the smoke lifts and the steppe lies scarred but alive, one question remains suspended in the heat of the summer air: if Kursk changed the course of the Eastern Front, what would it take to finally break the war's grinding cycle of destruction entirely?